Good evening. I am the Catholic Defender, Don Hartley, also known as the Catholic Defender. That's what most people remember and know me by, Catholic Defender. And I'm here at Fort Hood, and we're getting ready to discuss an event that took place in Iraq, scenario that took place in Iraq, after being on missions, just as you see right here with the example behind me in this museum that we're at. We were in a scenario where we were out there in the villages, and we were out there talking to the chief, trying to gather information. And I was there for medical support. And I had the opportunity to work on a young 3-year-old little girl who was a daughter of one of the sheikhs. And as a result of that scenario, I was able to came down with an idea that really changed a lot of the way we did business with the Iraqi nationals, the public out there, in all these villages, in which when we went out there and the medic was called upon, I developed a case where they would have Iraqi supplies. And so the medic was able to go out there and see these civilians. By the end of 15 months, we saw literally thousands of Iraqi civilians doing medical aid that was, I think, very significant. By the end of our tour there, we had helped change a lot of the opinion of what a lot of the Iraqis had on Americans there, because of a lot of the good that we became a very strong asset to our command in giving this kind of support to a very crippled health program there in Iraq, because of the Shiites and the Sunni, the administration of health, it was in shambles, and so there was a lot of violence, and parents didn't know what to do with their children. Very difficult scenario, and they were glad to see our medics and what we were able to do in small ways. It became a very large measure for our unit, and it was a very important part. Well, after one such mission, I came home and I'm checking my computer, my email, and I'm checking on DCF, Catholic Defenders of the Catholic Faith, and I'm just going over a lot of the emails that I've been receiving. And I saw an individual that I hadn't seen for just a little while. His story and mine go back to 1998, Korea. When I was stationed in Korea, he was our battalion chaplain, and he was an Episcopalian. And so obviously, we would always have fun debating. Being a year away from home in Korea, we're supporting one another. And it was always fun because he was Episcopalian. I referred to him as my liberal Catholic friend. I would also refer to, I would always challenge him, and what are you doing hanging in a halfway house, basically. Because a lot of people will see the Episcopal Church as kind of a halfway house between Protestantism and Catholicism. And so we always had our fun. But anyway, I was also a Eucharistic minister in the field, so in the absence of a Catholic priest, I was able to take our Lord in Holy Communion to the Catholics out there in the field, which that was always a blessing to me. I felt like David. If you can imagine David dancing before the ark. I had the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords with me in the Blessed Sacrament, and I was entrusted by the church, by the Diocese of the Military, to offer Holy Communion to the Catholics in that circumstance, in the absence of a Catholic priest. And what a blessing that was, I have to tell you. Well, during this time when I was with the battalion chaplain, we would always, whenever he had services that he would do, I would always go out with him to do the Catholic service. And that was always an opportunity for me to, and it was great for the Catholics because it kind of kept us together, their Catholic identity. So there's good reasons in having these Catholic outreaches to our Catholic people out there at the tip of the spear. We did this for most of my military career. And so I think it's very important that we maintain a Catholic presence when we're out there at the tip of the spear on these JSSs or these other countries like Afghanistan and Iraq. So that's very important. But this chaplain, and why this is important to the story, is that on one fateful night in Korea, doing midnight maneuvers, one of our APCs, one of our M113 tracks, went off of the bridge and into the river, and there were the driver and the TC were able to get out. But there were 4 soldiers and 1 Katyusha, that is a Korean soldier who was assigned to our unit, that was in the back of the APC, and they all died. And when it came to the Army, not the funeral, they don't have funerals per se, but they would remember the fallen soldiers. And as a result of that, I asked our battalion if I could do a rosary on behalf of the 5 soldiers, the 4 American soldiers and the 1 Katyusha, if we could do a rosary on their behalf. And the battalion basically said that we could. It was elective, anyone who could join us, who would like to join us. And I invited the battalion chaplain to join us, to say a few words on behalf of these soldiers. And he did. And what was interesting was I picked the prayers, I picked the rosary, we did a few songs, and gave him an opportunity to speak. And it went off pretty well without a hitch. These soldiers were lifted up in prayer, and their families, and I felt that was very important. And then, as time went on, I was able to get my PCS orders back to the United States, came home. I go to Fort Sam Houston for ANOC, which is a senior NCO school, and that was important. And by the time I got back home, it was, say, sometime April, May time period. I'm sitting at home, and I get a call from my old battalion chaplain, and he gives me a surprise. He says, he thanks me for leading him to Mary, because as a Protestant, he don't know Mary. This rosary that we did had a huge impact on him. And he informs me that his wife and children were, at that point, already in RCIA, and they are being received into the church that year. And then he told me that he's still a Protestant minister. For the next 2 years, he would serve out that obligation. And he did. Once that obligation was over, he himself went through the RCIA, and he became a Catholic, went on to become a Catholic deacon, and then also from Kentucky, from Lexington, Kentucky, he also then goes to Rome and gets the approval of the Pope, and he actually is now a Catholic priest. What a powerful story this is. And so he calls me and he tells me this, and what great news this was to me. It was a blessing, a huge blessing. And so that understood, back in Iraq in 2007, I'm checking it out, and I see my battalion chaplain's email address come up. And I thought it was him. And I respond to him and say, hey, how you doing? It's been a long time since I've seen you. What's going on? And the response back to me came back saying, I'm not who you think I am. I'm his son, or one of his sons. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. I'm the Catholic Defender. You may not know me as who I am, but he stopped me for a second. He said, wait a second, you're the Catholic Defender? I go, yes. And he says, I want to thank you for the work that you did with my father. As a result of the work that you did with my father, he became a Catholic. And as a result of that, I became a Catholic. And then he went on to say that not only was he a Catholic, but all his brothers and sisters. And then he came back online and said that all his aunts and uncles, their whole family was transformed and converted. And I'm like, wow, that just totally lifted me up. And I asked him, I came back on him and I asked him, for you, what was it that sold the deal? And he came back and he said, you know, after a pause, he came back and he said, when Jesus said to Simon, son of Barjona, you are Peter, or you are Kepha, and upon this Kepha I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. When he came to that understanding, everything else fell into line. And I just have to tell you, that so touched my heart, and his story has touched my heart. So many people have been affected because of the work that he's doing now as a parish priest. And so, whenever you find yourself in any circumstance, the Lord will help you through it. And whether you're in Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere, you know, if we place the Lord in our hearts and we know what we place Him first in our lives, then no matter what circumstance you're in, He can help you through it. And so, with that in mind, there is just another example of many, many people converting to the Catholic faith. And so with that, I want to thank everyone who is supporting deepertruthblog.com and supporting our radio show, and also supporting the troops, our military. And we just want to continue to offer prayer for our troops who are at the tip of the spear, and keep them in your prayers. So may God bless you, and thank you. Good night.